Welcome to the BizLife Podcast. Once again, we're broadcasting live from UNR Extension Small Business Education Studios in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada. Happy to be here with you today. My name is Mike Bindrup, and I'm joined with my co-host, Mr. Peter Guzman, who's the president of Latin Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for having me. Business is my life.
Absolutely. And the Latin Chamber has been such a great co-sponsor with us of the show, and we're just happy to have you guys here and participating with us. So today we're going to be talking about payroll, and we're here with Nuvia from ADP. And Nuvia, you want to give us a little introduction about yourself?
I'm excited to be here. I've been working with ADP for the last couple of years, but prior to this, I've been working with businesses for probably the last 5-6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really, really excited to share some insight on payroll, and hopefully I get to help some people out.
Awesome.
And she's excited to be working with the Latin Chamber of Commerce.
That is true.
Absolutely.
Yes, 100%.
We love working with you guys. So why do we need to be on payroll?
Why do you need to be on payroll?
Or who needs to be on payroll?
Great question. So any business that has at least one employee, and the only exception would be if you are a sole proprietor and you are the only employee for the business or the only worker, you cannot be on payroll.
True. Don't do that. We talk about this all the time. You cannot do this. IRS will severely beat you financially if you do this. It's a wrong move, right?
But it's all about education, right? So
Absolutely.
That's why this is so important, because a lot of people, and especially small businesses, don't know the rules and can get themselves in trouble. So that's why we at the Latin Chamber thought this was so important, this partnership and collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's the biggest misconception around payroll?
There's a couple. I would say one of them is that, one, they don't need to have payroll because their business is too small. And so that comes into lack, of information. They don't necessarily know what they need to have payroll. As I mentioned, any business with at least one employee needs to have payroll. The other misconception is it's too expensive, right? And so what is expensive? And that's something that's very subjective. The idea here would be that you start off with a service that meets your needs at that time, and then hopefully you grow with that service.
Yeah, and I've done, we were talking about this earlier, I've done payroll in my own business myself by hand, which I do not recommend to anybody, right? I've done it through accounting software. I had an in-house accountant that used to do it, and I've used a payroll solutions company like ADP as well. And I have to tell you, that is the easiest way to do it, and that's what I recommend to all small business owners, is it's handled correctly and on time. And because if you mess up payroll, you're messing up your employees' taxes. Just remember that.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's too much of a liability. People forget that it's not just payroll taxes. I mean, there's quarterly filings that are involved. You have your W-2s. And so there's so much more that comes with that. I mean, deductions, right? What happens if you receive a letter from, regarding child support? Like, how do you add those deductions? All of these different things, right? So people, I think, forget that. And then when we talk about expense, I come to realize with these businesses that think that it's something that they can't afford, it's because they're outsourcing different services. And so they have different services with a whole bunch of different companies, and it's costing them so much more because it's not integrated.
Gotcha.
And that's another area where we know at the Latin Chamber, the small businesses, sometimes because they think this is too expensive or too complicated, they go without, and then they don't have their paperwork in order, which is going to hurt them in other areas. Going to hurt them in other opportunities they're not going to have because they don't have their paperwork in order. I'm now seeing that firsthand with this. The
PPP?
Well, the IRS money that is being refunded for
employee retention credit.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if you don't have your paperwork in order, you may not have access to that money that is actually there for you.
Nope.
100%. And I saw that a lot with businesses wanting to apply for the PPP. And these were businesses that really, really needed that support.
Yeah, we saw that.
And they just didn't have they didn't have a payroll in place. They had employees, right? They were working under that capacity as a W-2, but they weren't being paid as a W-2, and that really, really hurt them.
Yeah. And if we learned anything during COVID, is making sure that you had your accounting in place. A lot of people didn't even have their taxes done from the previous year, and all of a sudden you have to scramble and get all this done. If you use a payroll service, everything's there for you. It's really easy. The other benefit is, and we were talking about this earlier, is, my employee comes to me and says, "Hey, Mike, I lost my W-2. Can you print me a new one?" And I go, "Why don't you get on the app or call ADP and they'll handle it for you." Just that time that you have to spend as a business owner dealing with more HR payroll issues, forget it. You'd prefer to do that.
Again, that's how we're selling this. And I use the word selling wrong, but this is how we're promoting this and pushing this. This is like having an HR, it's your payroll company, everything in order, right? What is valuable to a small business owner? Time.
Yep.
And this is time now that you can focus on your business and let the professionals handle this. The other thing we're telling them is that, listen, in the United States, this is how it works. FICO scores and having proper paperwork. This is how you really get opportunities for other things.
Absolutely.
And again, this is a no-brainer in my opinion.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think we had spoken about this before and even earlier. When you think of business owners that are super busy and they're wearing multiple hats, especially with this current, employee market, right? What if they're out on vacation or maybe they're super busy and they're doing something and there's an employee that's wanting to buy a vehicle or they need proof of income? If you don't have things in order, you don't have the technology like we offer, how are you getting that to them? Now you're having to stop everything that you need to do to get that to them, or feel bad and tell them, sorry, I can't help you at this moment, and then have an employee that's upset. Leave it up to them so that they have access to this technology and they can access their own proof of income. And I think that's so valuable.
Well, and absolutely. And if the employee has any questions, they can contact you as well. If you as the business owner have questions, you have a perfectly good resource with the payroll processing company. I mean, because there's questions that happen all the time. What if an employee wants an advance? What if an employee, there's a lot of questions that can come down because we deal with employees. Employees are people, right? And they get sick, they get married, they get divorced, they get in car wrecks, there's problems, they're dealing with aging parents. There's a million issues that happen with your employees. And as a business owner, you have to engage them where they're at. And that's really difficult, but this can help lighten your load a little bit as a small business owner.
100%.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about 1099 employees versus W-2 employees.
Yes, and I'll correct you with that. So 1099 contractors.
Oh, thank you.
W-2s.
Don't play with her. Don't mess with her.
And the reason why I say that is because I think that term employee is used so loosely, forgive me. So people will say, well, 1099 employee or a W-2 employee, and it's like there's a distinct difference between the two, right? A 1099 is a contractor, it is not an employee, and a W-2 is an employee. And really what makes a difference is the capacity in which they work for the company. Somebody can't come in and be like, I want to be a 1099. It's how you are working for that company that determines whether you're a 1099. And so there's a lot of gray area, and then there's been a lot of oversight to help employees making sure that they're classified correctly. But it creates a huge problem for you payroll-wise, workers' comp-wise, if you're misclassifying employees. Yeah. So huge. Business owners need to kind of reevaluate and take a look. Okay, well, is this person, am I controlling their schedule? Am I controlling all aspects of their work? Are they using my equipment? Are they using tools, right?
Yeah.
Uniforms. And so if it's yes, then you need to reevaluate, and that may be a W-2 employee. And so
to all my fellow real estate professionals, you are definitely 1099.
Yeah.
Right? I've been my almost 24 years in that.
For realtors, it's interesting. Yes. Most of them, I would say 1099s, but what if you have an office that has an admin person, right? And they have
They're W-2.
They're W-2.
Yeah.
I had 12 of them, yes.
But most agents are, you're correct, because, an agent can work on Thursdays or decide to take Thursdays off, whatever, right? Yeah. I liken it to in construction, right? You hire a framing contractor to come in and frame up your house, right? When you hire, Jake that owns the company, Jake probably isn't going to come out on site. He's going to have a whole crew of people that show up. So part of it is, can you send somebody in your proxy to go do the job? Or do you have to be there personally? If you have a W-2 employee, you're expected to be there. You're paying that person to do a job. They're supposed to be wherever you tell them to be, right? But if you're an independent contractor, you could send a proxy in, right? You probably should have your own business license if you're an independent contractor. A lot of times companies like to see that, just to say that, hey, you are independent. Can you send somebody else in to do it? Are you using your own tools, your own truck, your own whatever? And as long as you complete it by the deadline, it doesn't matter what schedule you have for it.
Yeah.
And then just kind of adding to what you were saying, Peter, There's in some situations where a realtor will have their own EIN or their own LLC, and due to their, maybe it makes more sense tax-wise, and this is something that they would speak with their tax professional about.
Yep.
But a lot of times they're an LLC, and they're filing their taxes as an S corp, and so they'll be their own employee.
Yeah, that's how I'm set up.
Yep. So how easy is it to get payroll set up? Like, does this take a month, 2 months? How quick can you guys set up? If I call you guys today and say, hey, ADP, I need to put somebody on payroll, how do I make that happen?
Okay, great question. And I'll give you a couple options. So if it's a brand new company and they've never had payroll before, we can get them turned around within a week. Sometimes even within
awesome.
a few days, right? Depending on how responsive, the business owner is, or how busy they are with getting us the information that we need. But it's very, very easy turnaround time when they've never had payroll set up and it's only a few employees. And that's for like a basic package. If you have a business that has maybe, let's say, as an example, like a restaurant, and they've had payroll processing maybe with a different provider and now they're switching over, we need to collect certain information, and that takes time. If we can get it all done in one sitting, the process is very, very fast. But sometimes the collecting of those documents can take a little bit of time depending on how busy they are. We have also more robust platforms, which we tend to call our white glove service. This particular platform really kind of manages all aspects of, or it's a human capital management platform or package, and it manages all HR aspects, and that takes a little bit longer. That can take maybe about a month or so, but those typically will be for larger companies.
Okay. So it's pretty quick.
Oh, it's very, very
pretty quick. And it's fairly painless, right? What do you have to have? What do you have to have? You have to have your business bank account. You have to have your EIN number. Is there anything else?
Employees information. And then everything else, it's just documents and information that we provide to get signed.
That's pretty simple. Now, a lot of small business owners that I talk to, I say, why aren't you using a payroll company? And they were like, it's too expensive.
Yep.
That's the number one reason why people say I'm not using a payroll company. And I said, yeah, but you spent 24 hours in the last 2 weeks doing payroll. That's not a good use of your time as a business owner, right? If you're selling homes, I'd say put those 24 hours into selling a house. They can pay dividends.
You got to use your time wisely.
Absolutely.
I think when you put it into perspective like that, I think sometimes business owners are taken back like, wow, you're right. And that's something that I tend to ask a lot of business owners when I am confronted with that response. Like, this is so expensive. And I'm like, but you just told me that it took you 10 hours to do your payroll, and then you ran into so many hiccups and then you had a penalty. Like, how much did that cost you?
Absolutely. And you can make errors so easy. You transpose two numbers and all of a sudden you've messed up an employee's taxes. It's going to cause you a whole lot of headache with IRS. It's going to cause you a lot of headache to fix this. A lot easier to use a payroll service company. So I'm a believer in doing that.
I've known businesses that there was a payroll error and they've lost an employee. And especially in this current market right now, that's not something that business owners can afford to do.
Yeah, true.
That's a good point.
Let's talk about workers' compensation. We hear people talk about that sometimes. What's workers' compensation first and foremost?
Yeah, so a disclosure, I'm not a licensed agent, but I'll discuss really how our company helps support in that department. So workers' comp is coverage provided to the employees that are working for the company in the event that they're injured while performing work duties. This is required in the state of Nevada whenever you have employees, required by law. As mentioned before, there's a lot of oversight for business owners. So in the event that you don't have that and you are dinged, the penalties are pretty high. So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when for workers' comp. Business owners that they themselves are the only employees for the company, they're not required. They're actually exempt from having workers' comp in the state of Nevada. Yeah,
you don't have to put yourself on if you're the owner.
Correct.
But I still recommend it.
Okay.
I still recommend it.
For 100%. Sure. If you are a business and you are in a very risky industry, and what I mean by risky is that there's a lot of potential for injury. So if you're, a landscaper, if you
make fireworks,
right?
You deal with wild animals. If you're in
construction and you're the one out there physically, it would be probably a good idea for you to have that coverage for yourself because you're likely to get injured.
Yeah, it's true. And what's tricky about workers' compensation is sometimes I've heard people say, well, I didn't have it on my buddy that was helping me out for the day doing this or this or this, but guess what? He got hurt on the job And then when they take him to the hospital, he doesn't say, hey, I was helping Mike. He says, I was working for Mike. That's what he says.
Yeah.
He's not, I'm working as an independent contractor for my own thing. No, he says, I'm working for Mike. And so at the hospital, if anybody goes in the hospital and they say, how did this happen? And you mention work, they file a report out, and that goes immediately to workers' compensation. And if you don't have it, you get penalized instantly. I mean, it's immediately. It's part of the thing. It's how we have this stuff set up so we can protect workers. I mean, that's the goal of it. And you don't want your employees getting hurt. I mean, that's a main thing. We want to take care of our employees, but do you have to have, so you don't have to have workers' compensation on yourself as the owner. Still, we recommend it. But with independent contractors, do you have to have workers' compensation? What if they're an independent contractor?
Okay, so great question, and I get asked this all the time. So for 1099s, the common misconception is that as a business owner, because that is a 1099, I don't have to provide workers' comp for them. And that's tricky because, yes, they're not your employee, right? It's a 1099, but it is your responsibility to make sure that they have the proper coverages.
Yes.
And if they don't, then the liability falls on you.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to look at and evaluate the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, you are the business owner. You contracted them, so it all falls under your responsibility. You have to make sure that the people that you're contracting have the coverages that they need.
Absolutely.
And choose wisely.
Yes.
Because it could be a mistake that you're going to pay for down the road.
Absolutely. And I can't stress it enough. It's just it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? So that's what insurance is for. Insurance is literally for unforeseen stuff. And, we try to mitigate risks in business as much as we can because there's just so many that are out there. This is one of those areas where you can literally you can head it off at the pass and say, I've got this done. Make sure that you're covering anybody who's working for you in any capacity and with workers' comp. Now, you can turn it on and turn it off, right? So if you have an employee or somebody that's working for you or an independent contractor, and they're only working 3 days out of the month, you can turn it on for the 3 days that they're working, and you can turn it off. You can't. So that's a benefit. Yeah,
and I will just add to that the way that it works with us, because we can actually integrate the workers' comp within our platform. It's kind of one of the benefits of having it through our company. And the idea here is that you're paying as you go. So as you're processing payroll, you're paying exactly what is due at that moment, not an estimated amount. So it really eliminates the discrepancies at the end of the year between overpaying or underpaying.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, let's go back to payroll real quick. What type of taxes, when you get a paycheck as a W-2 employee, you have all this stuff taken out, and there's all these acronyms and things like that. What does all that mean, and how much is it?
Okay,
for real.
For real, okay. So I'm a W-2 employee too, right? So when you look at your paycheck, and I'll talk about it as an employee standpoint, and then also what the business owner is seeing.
Okay.
Because the business owner also has a responsibility for some of these payroll taxes, right? So when you look at your paycheck and you take a look at your gross, right? That is the total of earnings. That's not including everything that has to be taken out. So you have Social Security, you have Medicare, and you have federal. Mm-hmm. And your federal is going to be based on your withholding status and what you generated, how much money you got paid. And really that's what your portion is. And as a W-2, you have the benefit of being a W-2 because a business owner is going to pay the other portion of those taxes, right? The Social Security and the Medicare. So as a business, you have a couple taxes, payroll taxes. One of them would be, and I'll talk about the state of Nevada since we're in the state of Nevada. Yep. So as a business owner, you would have to be registered for the state of unemployment insurance. Every new business in Nevada starts at a 3%.
Okay.
Until recent, or as far as I'm aware, right? Unless something changed yesterday.
It's still 3.
It's still 3.
So, so every new business that is registered starts at a 3%. And so you're paying a 3% tax on that, right? For the unemployment insurance. Mm-hmm. You're paying Social Security, you're paying Medicare. So those are the taxes that you're paying for the employees.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Perfect. Any horror stories you've seen you can relate to us?
Oh, horror stories. Let me think about this. I've seen a lot. Let me think.
I mean, there's a lot with payroll. Anything you can just say, please, use a reputable payroll company because I've heard some stories and it can really, because this deals with taxes, right?
For sure. I'll state this. I have worked with some clients that have came to me, referred by some of our great accountant partners, and new client of theirs. They had payroll set up way before, they came in contact with this accountant. And when evaluating their situation, they came to realize, you don't seem to be in compliance with the state. Mm-hmm. They're getting some notices. We're trying to figure out what's going on. And we find out that they were actually never registered for the state of unemployment insurance ever. And so that's a problem, right? Yeah, because that's costly. Problem. So depending on how long it's been, there's 4 quarters in a year, right? You could, I've seen somebody be with a company for 3 quarters and those reports were not filed. And that's scary, having to go back and fix it and taking the time. And obviously you owe, right? You have an interest that you have to pay to the state because of that. So that's a bit tough. And making that transition onto a new company can be a little bit tough because you don't have the reports that you need to make that transition.
Yeah. Okay.
So I would say that that's probably something that I run into more often than I would like to admit, for sure. Something that I would like to mention in terms of misconceptions or some things that may be popping out for business owners, I think this is really valuable. You may start to have employees say, "Hey, like I received my check and I didn't pay any federal. Like what's going on?" And they now think that they're going to have an issue with compliance or that they're going to owe money. And what's important for business owners to realize is that the federal taxes are based on the employee's withholding status and also how much they were paid. So if they weren't paid, like our system automatically tracks that. And so it's something automatic. They don't have to do anything. As long as you put the information correctly into the platform, it will calculate how much is owed for federal. And if they have several dependents, they're married, maybe they're not grossing over a certain amount, no federal will be paid at that moment. So just something to kind of take into account. Because I had somebody actually reach out to me earlier today and they're like,
and once again, if they have a question, they can literally just contact.
Oh, for sure.
They have access to a
real person. They can access to a real person, which is great. So
in today's society,
we need that.
We need that.
So besides that, any other services that ADP offers?
Oh, we offer so many things, right? So from time and attendance, payroll services, and we're talking about like hiring, recruiting, retaining, training, terminating. All of that. Workers' comp, we have retirement services.
So a full HR suite plus...
all things employee related.
Okay.
All things employee related for sure.
All right. What's the best way to get in touch with you then? If somebody says, wow, Mike, Peter, we've listened. This is good. We want to set this up. How do we get payroll set up?
They would just have to give us a call.
What's your number?
Yeah, 702-717-0562.
Okay.
And mention the Latin Chamber of Commerce.
Yes, for sure.
For a huge discount.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah, so
do you get a discount?
Oh, yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, so anybody that's referred by the Latin Chamber will receive a discount, and depending on what the company's needs are, but absolutely. So mention that you were referred by the Latin Chamber so we can go ahead and take care of you.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you being on the show here today.
My pleasure.
Payroll is one of those issues where you really got to get it right and use a reputable payroll company. ADP's the largest that we have, right? You are the largest.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
100%. And thank you, Peter, for being here with us as well today.
Always.
And go do something great in your business today. Thank you.